Welcome to another episode of Judge for Yourself. After the terrible events of Marikana, it's become clear that the mining sector has been plagued by deep socio-economic problems. Entrenched inequality within the industry, the poor living conditions of workers have been put under the microscope. Meanwhile, labour unrest, tensions between the unions continue to affect productivity at our mines, indeed the whole future of the mining sector. But how do we actually fix this industry? And why is it that 20 years into democracy, we really haven't had a debate what a mining sector in a democratic South Africa should look like? Now, if you want to join this debate on Twitter, please share your views by using the hashtag JFYMining. To discuss this topic, I'm joined in the studio by Sipho Pityana, who's the chairman of AngloGold Ashanti, Luthando Brukwe, head of the Transformation for the National Union of Mineworkers, and James Denton, independent consultant for mining analysts. Before I start, I wonder if I can just place on record what the Minister of Mineral Affairs has said with regard to bad management by the mining house bosses as a chief cause of labour unrest.
I had a discussion with one of the leaders of the mining houses, and when we tried to distinguish between the mines which went on strike whilst they are doing platinum and those who did not, doing the same operations, I got to understand that part of the problem was the attitude of management with regard to the mines where the strikes happened. So there was an acknowledgement from at least some of the mining captains of industry that they could have managed better.
So is this just a question that if we got better management, we'd be fine?
I don't know. I don't have the context of the minister's reference to a conversation that we would have
about
had.
the fact that management of the mining houses has just not been up to par.
Well, I think they're intractable issues, and I think that to reduce it to just issue of the quality of management is quite superficial. The serious issues raised, and I think they pertain to working conditions, the need for improvement and transformation of the sector, etc., etc. But I think it's important, though, to locate the conversation within the framework of inequalities in society generally, because we have a vision as a country and a value system that is averse to kinds of inequalities that have persisted since liberation of this country in 1994. But the isolation of the mining industry misses the point, because in fact, when you look at the numbers in terms of employment and wages across the various sectors, mining industry stacks up much better than others. Wages average generally in various sectors of the economy at about 3,000 as entry-level wages.
But the point I wanted to make to you is that the Marikana episode, well, it's not an episode, tragedy, focused attention on the fact that we still had a migrant labour system, that in a sense people were still being employed on that basis, that where was this wholesale change which would be in accordance with that value system?
Well, I mean, Dennis, migrant labour system is an integral part of the extractive industries. You go to Australia, you find migrant labour system. It manifests in different ways. So the issue is not migrant labour system, but it is about how injustice gets linked to it.
Okay, but what do you say about, mining 20 years later?
Judge, I think Mr. Pityana's point is exactly what the minister was talking about, whereby executives are not really getting it.
What are they not getting in your view?
Because the migrant labor system is fundamental to the problem, because it's talking about the socio-economic impact of that system, which creates the need for housing and living conditions within the surrounding or hosting communities. But I also want to agree with the minister in terms of the lack of executive will from the industry captains in ensuring that we are transforming the industry. Look at the statistics in terms of the mining chart. After the 2009, the revised charter, the signing of the stakeholder declaration, where are we now? We are still facing the same way. The Muloto report that is going to come out, it's all going to paint a similar results that we all know that the industry still is largely untransformed.
But you do accept that in other mining countries, there is a migrant labor system.
Yes, of course we accept that. But that does not mean that South Africa should not deal with the system in itself.
I'm going to ask you how that should happen first, but I wanted to... I mean, what do you say? I mean...
I think two...
Because can I just frame it in the way... Unlike you three, I'm not an expert in this field, and that'll be apparent, no doubt, to my viewers. So here's my point, perhaps representing Joe Citizen.
Yeah.
When the Marikana when the Marikana massacre occurred, I then read a piece by Gavin Hartford, and I was gobsmacked that I was unaware of just quite what was going on in my own country in relation to the mining sector, that it seemed to me that so much hadn't been changed. Some had, but some hadn't. I don't know whether that article's correct, but then I bothered to go out and have a look myself. I trudged down there, and I was deeply disturbed.
The scenarios on the mine aren't fantastic and aren't ideal, but I think it's very important to acknowledge what has changed. And I think that we don't do that enough. And the other thing that comes into this discussion, and it began with what the Minister said, is the mistrust between business and government and labour and government, etc. That mistrust, I think, has a huge part to play in what goes in what is said and what happens, because mistrust is an expectation, and people behave in terms of their expectations.
How would we solve that?
In the same way you solve mistrust in a marriage, you talk. You can't be apart and hope that mistrust will be broken down. You need to come together, collaborate, define a common future, and go there.
But you've got to have a vision for that.
Define a common vision and then a common future. Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Dennis, I must say, an argument that says since 1994 nothing has changed in the mining sector is a misrepresentation.
All right, okay.
First of all, from 2005, just to give an example, 2005 to 2012 in the gold and coal mining sector, wages increased by 78%, even though productivity came down by 21%. As a Director General of Labour in 1995, I visited hostels, single-sex hostels, which represented an assault on human dignity. I've been there 2-3 times, certainly at AngloGold Ashanti gold mines. Privacy units, huge amount of capital invested to transform those into habitable places. Privacy units, family units, etc., etc. Of course, it is not across the board. The extent of that transformation has not been consistent across the board, every mining house, every sector. And I think those that have not moved to transform should be isolated and dealt with accordingly.
Right,
to make a generalization is self-defeating.
Okay, all right, we'll talk about self-defeating. I'm going to give you a chance as well, but I've got to take a break first.